You've likely heard of the many mysteries surrounding the flood, but there's one particular detail that is often overlooked in this narrative. A specific creature was forbidden from entering the ark. Why? If God instructed Noah to take a pair of each species, what could possibly explain this exclusion? This mystery has baffled scholars for centuries. Throughout history, theologians, archaeologists, and researchers have sought to unravel this enigma. Ancient legends speak of mighty beings that roamed the earth before the flood. Could they have been the ones excluded? What truly transpired in those ancient days? The Bible conceals profound mysteries, revealing them only to those who delve deep into the scriptures. What if this story is much grander than we've ever imagined? The world had become corrupt. Violence, injustice, and depravity consumed humanity, and God saw that wickedness was spreading unchecked. The hearts of men were filled with evil thoughts, and the perfect creation he had formed now teetered on the brink of ruin. In light of this, God made a drastic decision. He would cleanse the earth with a great flood, eradicating perversity and restoring his order. But in the midst of this corruption, there was one man who stood apart. Noah, righteous and blameless, walked with God. His unwavering faith and impeccable conduct made him the only one worthy of preserving the creation. God chose him for an unprecedented mission: to build a massive ark that would serve as a refuge for his family and the living creatures that inhabited the earth. The ark's construction was not merely a means of survival. It was a sign of hope, a second chance for the world. Noah was to follow specific instructions to ensure the vessel could withstand the devastation that was coming. Genesis 6:11-16 outlines the divine command. The ark was to be made of cypress wood, coated with pitch inside and out to make it waterproof. It would have one door and 3 decks, providing enough space for all those who would be saved. The ark's dimensions were awe-inspiring, measuring 450 feet in length, 75 feet in width, and 45 feet in height. Its grandeur reflected the significance of its mission. Every measurement, every detail was meticulously planned by God to guarantee the survival of the chosen ones. While the world continued in its corruption, Noah worked obedient and resolute, preparing for the judgment that was about to fall upon the earth. If you like the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the video. God's command was clear. In addition to his family, Noah was instructed to bring into the ark a pair of every living species upon the earth. Genesis 6:19 records this precise instruction: "Of every living thing, of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female." This command was not merely an act of temporary preservation, but part of God's grand design to ensure that life would continue after the flood. The purpose was far greater than immediate survival. By selecting pairs of each species, God was establishing a future for his creation. When the waters receded, these animals would repopulate the earth, ensuring that nature's balance would be restored. This plan allowed for no failures, and Noah, in total obedience, followed every instruction without hesitation. His faith never wavered, and his precision in executing the divine order was essential for everything to unfold according to God's will. The ark was not just a physical shelter. It symbolized a new beginning, a renewal of creation, where only the righteous and the chosen would have a second chance. The vessel carried the promise of restoration, a reminder that even in the face of judgment, God offers redemption. With the ark prepared, Noah received a new instruction: to gather pairs of every species of animal. The survival of the world after the flood depended on the careful selection of these creatures. God commanded that each species have at least 1 pair aboard, ensuring that the diversity of life would be preserved and restored once the waters receded. The ark would not house only large mammals or majestic birds. From the massive elephants to the smallest insects, all forms of life played a role in the balance of creation. The variety of creatures reflected God's care for every detail of nature. No species was to be left behind. To ensure the selection was complete, God set specific criteria. The animals were chosen with great care, ensuring they could reproduce and repopulate the earth once again. The instructions were clear. 7 pairs of clean animals and 1 pair of unclean animals were to be brought aboard. The clean animals, used for sacrifices and nourishment, were preserved in greater numbers, while the unclean, though in fewer numbers, still had their place in God's divine plan. The presence of the animals in the ark carried profound significance. Among them, the so-called clean animals held an essential role in the relationship between God and humanity. Their symbolism extended beyond mere physical preservation. They represented purity and holiness, set apart for sacrifices that in the future would serve as acts of worship and atonement. The distinction between clean and unclean animals foreshadowed practices that would later be codified in the Mosaic Law. The unclean animals, though fewer in number, also had their importance. They represented the entirety of creation, showing that all forms of life, regardless of their direct usefulness to humanity, were part of the divine balance. The presence of each species reinforced the idea that God values every work of his hands. No creature was forgotten. The ark became a microcosm of the world, a reflection of the divine creation. Within it, species of all kinds coexisted, large and small, fierce and gentle. It was a picture of the harmony God intended, where every creature had its place and purpose. Beyond the preservation of life, the ark was a symbol of divine protection. Amidst destruction, it became the safe haven chosen by God to shelter his creation. Every being inside was a testament to the provision and care of the Creator. When the waters receded, a new cycle would begin. The diverse life saved in the ark pointed to a new covenant between God and humanity, a fresh opportunity to begin again. The flood was not merely judgment, it was an act of renewal, reaffirming God's covenant with his creatures. Among the many mysteries of the flood, one remains shrouded in speculation: the exclusion of certain creatures from the ark. In addition to the common animals, ancient accounts suggest that extraordinary beings, such as the Nephilim and other mythical figures, were left behind, condemned to destruction. These myths have traversed the centuries, fueling theories about what truly inhabited the earth before the flood. The Bible mentions the Nephilim in Genesis 6:4, describing them as giants, the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. They were powerful, and according to some scholars, they corrupted humanity with violence and sin. The presence of these creatures may have been one of the reasons for the divine judgment, as their existence represented a forbidden mingling of the celestial and the earthly. Outside of sacred texts, legends speak of beings such as centaurs, chimeras, and other hybrid creatures, supposedly inhabitants of the earth in ancient times. Although the Bible does not directly refer to these figures, some believe they could be manifestations of a corrupted era that God chose to eradicate. Despite the lack of detailed biblical accounts about these creatures, myths surrounding them continue to live on in the human imagination. Many cultures preserve narratives of beings excluded from divine renewal, reinforcing the idea that something beyond humans and ordinary animals perished in the flood. If this exclusion really occurred, it could symbolize the purification of creation. By eliminating these beings, God would restore the original order of the world, ensuring that only his will would prevail in the new earth that would emerge after the waters receded. The selection of beings to enter the ark was not random. God commanded that only the animals he had created according to their kinds should be preserved. This meant that any creature resulting from forbidden crossbreeding or corrupted influences had to be left behind. The exclusion of hybrid beings was not merely a physical decision, but a spiritual act that emphasized the separation between what was pure and what had been distorted. The goal was to preserve the purity of the original creation. Creatures that represented an improper mixture could not be part of the new beginning that God intended to establish after the flood. The divine intention was always to maintain the order and perfection of his works, preventing foreign influences from continuing to exist in the restored world. These beings were symbols of the corruption that had taken hold of humanity. The Nephilim, the giants, and other figures mentioned in ancient legends were seen as the consequence of disobedience and the violation of the boundaries set by God. Their existence reflected the degradation that had led the earth to the point of divine judgment. Beyond the spiritual symbolism, there was also a practical consideration. The presence of powerful and violent creatures could jeopardize the survival of the chosen ones within the ark. The environment inside the vessel needed to remain harmonious, ensuring that life could be preserved without any threats. The exclusion of certain creatures from the ark has sparked a variety of interpretations over the centuries. Theologians debate whether this decision was purely a matter of practicality or if it carried a deeper spiritual significance. Some argue that only those creatures following God's natural order should have been preserved, while others see this exclusion as a symbolic act of separation between the pure and the corrupted. Among the reasons given is the corruption of the original creation. Creatures like the Nephilim, mentioned in Genesis, are seen as a distortion of God's divine plan. These entities, the result of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men, represented a departure from the established order, bringing violence and wickedness to the earth. Their exclusion reinforces the idea that God sought to restore the world to its original condition. This act can be understood as a manifestation of divine justice. The flood was not just a punishment, but a necessary purification. The presence of these corrupted creatures served as a reminder of how far humanity had strayed, making a drastic intervention unavoidable. Noah, on the other hand, stood out for his unquestionable obedience. He followed every instruction without hesitation, demonstrating complete trust in God's will. His faithfulness ensured the divine covenant remained intact, serving as an example for future generations. More than a historical event, the flood teaches that God seeks a relationship based on obedience. Trust in his instructions not only leads to salvation, but also secures a new beginning, grounded in faithfulness and the restoration of what was lost. When the waters receded and Noah stepped out of the ark, God established a solemn covenant with him. The flood had purified the earth, but a promise was made: the world would never again be destroyed in this manner. This covenant was not just a guarantee for Noah and his family, but for all future generations. God reaffirmed his commitment to humanity, offering them a new chance to live according to his will. As a sign of this promise, God placed the rainbow in the sky. This symbol became a visible reminder of the covenant between the Creator and his creation. Every time the rains came, the rainbow would serve as a reassurance that, despite divine justice, his mercy would prevail. The covenant did not erase God's justice, but revealed his desire to offer redemption. With this, a new relationship was established. The flood was not the end, but the beginning of a new era. God desired to restore humanity's original purpose, providing a path for coexistence based on righteousness and obedience. The renewal of the covenant showed that, despite humanity's fall, there was still hope. However, the flood remained a stark reminder of the consequences of sin. The world had been consumed by corruption, and the purification came in a devastating form. This event revealed that turning away from God comes with a price, and that divine justice cannot be ignored. Beyond the biblical account, Apocryphal writings provide intriguing details about the creatures that did not enter the ark. The Book of Enoch, one of the oldest texts outside the sacred canon, extensively mentions the Nephilim, describing their origin and the impact they had on humanity. These creatures were not just giants, they were also symbols of a deep corruption that prompted God to intervene with the flood. According to the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim were the result of the union between fallen angels and human women. These angels, called the Watchers, disobeyed divine commands by taking mortal wives, producing beings of superhuman strength and size. These giants spread violence and evil, bringing destruction upon the earth. Their existence was a direct affront to the order established by God. The Watchers did not only corrupt the human lineage, but they also introduced forbidden knowledge. The accounts claim that they taught sorcery, genetic manipulation, and occult practices, leading humanity down a path of ruin. The world before the flood became a place where creation itself was deformed, and the influence of these entities was one of the key reasons for God's decision to cleanse the earth. The destruction of the Nephilim and the exclusion of hybrid beings from the new world were part of this process of restoration. God was not merely eliminating evil, he was removing all traces of a corrupted creation. Other apocryphal texts, such as the Book of Jubilees, reinforce this narrative. They mention that the Nephilim and other beings outside God's divine order were removed from history to ensure that the post-flood world would be purified and once again reflect God's will. Accounts of the Nephilim vary between canonical and apocryphal texts. In Genesis, the mention of these beings is brief, indicating only that they were descendants of the sons of God and the daughters of men, existing on earth in the days leading up to the flood. Apocryphal writings, such as the Book of Enoch, go into much greater detail, describing their origins, actions, and the devastating impact they had on humanity, portraying them as violent giants and symbols of the moral decay of the time. The corruption caused by this forbidden union was one of the main factors leading to divine judgment. The blending of celestial beings with humans violated the order established by God, resulting in a society marked by violence and sin. Impurity spread, tainting not only humanity but all of creation. The flood was the answer to contain this contamination and restore the purity of the world. Both in biblical and apocryphal texts, the restoration of the original order is emphasized. God was not only eliminating evil, but he was also preparing the way for a new cycle, where humanity would have the opportunity to begin again without the corrupting influences of the past. The exclusion of corrupted creatures symbolized a fresh start. Nothing that fell outside of God's divine will could be preserved. The destruction was necessary for the world to be purified and to reflect once more the perfection of the Creator. The story of the flood is not just about the destruction and renewal of humanity, but also about the relationship between God, man, and creation. The preservation of the animals in the ark demonstrates God's care for all forms of life and reminds us of the responsibility we hold for the world around us. Just as God entrusted Noah with the task of protecting the species, we too must act as stewards of the world given to us. This narrative also raises a profound question. Why were certain creatures excluded? Was it solely an act of purification, or were there other hidden meanings? This mystery invites us to reflect on God's decisions and the spiritual principles behind this selection. Now we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the exclusion of these creatures? Do you believe there were beings beyond those mentioned in the scriptures? Leave a comment and share your perspective. If this content has piqued your interest, subscribe to the channel to continue exploring the hidden mysteries of the Bible. Your support is essential for us to bring more thought-provoking and revealing topics.